Owning Space is a women's health podcast reclaiming the narrative, helping women take up more space in society, in their bodies, and in their stories. Hosted by me, Annika Hindocha. Each episode explores a topic that's often dismissed, misunderstood, or considered too uncomfortable to discuss. My mission is to break the silence around the struggles so many women are told to push through or hide. From burnout to fertility challenges, endometriosis to ADHD, sexual trauma to MS, and more. We unpack how these experiences shape us differently, and how so many of us learn to mask the pain and just keep going. It's raw, real, and necessary, because silence helps no one, and it's time to change the way we talk about women's health, one honest conversation at a time. Today's guest has become one of the UK's leading voices in the fight for endometriosis awareness, workplace equality, and women's rights. After building a successful career as a management consultant at Accenture, Sanju was dismissed following surgery for severe endometriosis. Rather than accepting what had happened, she spent more than 7 years fighting one of the UK's most significant employment law cases relating to women's health. Her landmark Employment Appeal Tribunal case has helped reshape how endometriosis is considered under the Equality Act 2010, strengthening workplace protections for women with fluctuating chronic conditions. Alongside her advocacy, Sanju is also the founder of Rise, an education charity empowering young people through literacy, mentoring, and leadership. And today she continues to campaign for better awareness, workplace protections, and meaningful change for women living with endometriosis. Before we get into today's episode, I'd like to take a moment to thank our sponsor, PoCoco. If you've followed Owning Space for a while, you'll know how important it is to create moments where we can pause, rest, and reconnect with ourselves. Between work, podcasting, managing multiple health conditions, and everyday life, I realised how much I need to create intentional moments of calm. The PoCoco Galaxy has become part of my evening routine, whether I'm reading, journaling, or simply winding down before bed. It helps transform my space into a softer, more peaceful environment. If you'd like to create a little bit more calm in your evenings too, you can find PoCoco through the link in the show notes and use my code Owning Space for 21% off. Sanju, welcome to Owning Space.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm so grateful to be here.
I'm so happy that you're here. So today, many people may know you because of your landmark legal case. But before we get into that, I'd love listeners to get to know the women behind the headlines. So can you tell us about yourself before endometriosis became such a defining part of your life? And I'd love to talk about Accenture a little bit as well. So you've built this, you built an incredible career at Accenture. Can you tell us then what that career meant to you?
I love this sort of like, who am I? And I
think
of like,
who's the woman behind endometriosis? Not that that should be your identity, but you have made headlines because of that. So can you bring us back to, before everything started, kind of like before the 7 years?
Yeah, I was going to say Beanie Man reference. Who am I? The girl, dem sugar. I love music. First of all, I have to say, like, music is like my lifeblood. It keeps me going, all genres. Whether it be like rap and R&B and hip hop and reggaeton. And I want to say that because I think we often think about this sort of crazy woman who is like, dominated.
Burning her bras, do you know what I mean? Like burning her bras, like not shaving her armpits. And it's like, that's not what women's rights is. That's not what activism is just about.
If you don't want to shave your armpits, that's cool. I do shave mine. Okay. But yeah, I feel like it's important to talk about like literally who am I? And that was something that I had to figure out post my termination of employment. Mm-hmm. But the things that I love are who I am. So the music, and I play the violin.
Do you?
Yeah, and I'm in an orchestra. And, things like writing poetry are so integral to who I am. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what we need to realise, that outside of work, we are our own individual personality. Yeah. And that makes us who we are, and what we enjoy every single day is so important. Mm-hmm. And so when I think back to, years ago, how did I become this woman that has taken on Accenture in this David and Goliath case? It's all to do with my value system. Yeah. I always cared about justice, fairness and equality. It's something that was always fundamental to my existence and was why I then decided to do the Teach First program. So I did a maths degree at university. I stayed on and did a master's in maths because I got a scholarship. And then I was like, right, what am I going to do? I decided to do teaching. And that was because the tagline was about addressing educational disadvantage in this country. And I worked in an inner city London school. And again, all I cared about was ensuring the attainment of the young people that I worked with. And that was fundamental to the beginning of my career. Now, I did go on to do Accenture, teach first, 60% kind of stay in teaching at the time when I did the program and 40% go on to other things. And I went on to be a management consultant. And it meant the world to me. But I was also at a crossroads. I wasn't sure whether to continue on a path of education. I had just set up Rise, the education charity that I still run, and I didn't know what to do. Was it like pick Rise, pick Accenture, this global consulting firm?
How old were you at that stage?
I was 26.
Right.
Yeah, I was 26.
To build a charity at that young age is just incredible. And to also speak about values. And maybe I'm just speaking as I'm 38 now, and in my early 20s, I knew what, people spoke about their values and different things, but I don't think I knew myself that well. But it sounds like you did, and that has given you fundamentally the foundation to do what you have done. So has that come from your childhood? Was that from your parents?
Listen, I think a big part of it is that, I talk about Rise and India and the work we do there. That's because I have been going to a rural part of India since I was very little. I also say, I come from humble backgrounds. We grew up on a council estate. The most important thing to us was about ensuring that I still had connections with my cultural heritage. No car, no kind of luxuries that we consider in the Western world, but go back to your roots, hang out with the communities that need the most support and realize how privileged you are in this country.
Yeah.
And that gave me an incredible foundation. In fact, when I started Rise, it was very much about enabling the young people that I was teaching in London to have that sort of experience by connecting with, young people in rural India. Even though there was such disparity economically, there were so many connections in other ways.
Yeah.
And that's what my belief was, that, community is everything. We can create kinship, friendship and community. And that's also how I was at Accenture. I didn't just work for my clients hard. I did the side of desk job, which was, how do we ensure that everyone has a sense of belonging, feels like they're part of something amazing? Because we have this one life and we have to contribute to it. But I also should say that, I give a lot of gratitude to Teach First. When I was at that crossroads, it was Teach First who said, we've got this leadership development program, but we've also got support systems in place for you now that you've graduated from Teach First. Anytime you want to talk about your career, have a coach, have a mentor, these things are so important in your 20s.
Yeah.
Regardless of, how you've grown up, I need guidance now. We always need, someone to talk to, someone
100%.
to kind of share what we're going through. Not always, in terms of emotional and mental support, in terms of actual professional support, but from someone that actually cares and understands you as well. And I had that really early.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And it's interesting what you've said about it doesn't need to be like mental kind of health support, because when I think about having someone to talk to, I just go to therapy. I think that you just have to pay this fee for a therapist, but there's just so much more where you can get support. It could be a life coach, it could just be a mentor, as you say. And for some people that might work for them so much more, because again, it's aligning what they want to achieve rather than just continue to talk about their emotions or their mental health, which might not be helpful for some people.
Yeah, I agree.
So I think that's incredible. So tell us more about your Accenture journey then, because it sounds like you were filling up your cup outside of work, which is fundamentally so important. And a lot of people, myself included, I didn't realize, like, when one doesn't do that for so long, there will be a point where you kind of crash or you hit burnout or you realize you're really unhappy or depressed, and
then you will reflect and go, well, it wasn't, I wasn't going to the orchestra. I wasn't doing these things. I wasn't going to the gym or going for my treks or whatever it was. So tell me about your journey at the company.
Yeah, and I'm already thinking of so many things kind of later on in my career, but starting out at Accenture for me was like the most exciting thing.
Mm-hmm.
I cannot express how happy I was to have done a summer internship and then be offered a job at this huge consulting firm, the stuff of dreams, particularly.
And everyone knows it. And did you just feel at that stage in your life that you were just smashing it? You had got to the place where you wanted to be at that age?
Isn't it funny how just being associated with this company can do that?
Yeah.
But I do think it comes back from growing up in an Asian household and what does success look like? Well, success looks like becoming the CEO of something magnificent. It's crazy.
Yeah.
I know that everyone has that. But, that was my family saying, reach for the stars. And I thought the stars were a multinational that, worked globally, that had, huge prestige and reputation associated with it. And that helped my confidence and self-esteem. And I really felt like I had made it. Yeah, absolutely. And I also was just delighted that there was this connection between Teach First and Accenture. So actually everyone at Accenture knew that I'd done this 2-year leadership development program. And they were like, well, listen, you're already flying. You've handled a classroom.
Yeah.
You can handle a boardroom. And that's what it was like. So I loved it. I loved the work. I started in process improvement using my maths background. And I just was like, I'm going to accelerate and I'm going to hit each promotion level and it's going to feel amazing. And, in between, work hard, play hard. And it really kind of spoke to who I was already, wanting to fill my cup in a way that, made me feel like I was flourishing. I'm not saying that was the right thing, that it felt right at the time.
Yeah.
And, I did well. I hit the first promotion point quickly, the second promotion point quickly. And then I took a bit of time in trying to get from manager to senior manager. But that's also because I was beginning to think about what were the things that I'd stopped doing. I had stopped playing the violin. I maybe had stopped, seeing friends in the way that I had before. I had maybe begun to change in a way that I didn't like. I was working on the weekends a lot, and I kind of made this decision that I needed to kind of, have a realignment with myself. And I took a year off, and that was a big step for me. So I took a 1-year leave of absence. As you'll know, for anyone doing that, there's a lot of people who think that's going to be kind of the end of your career and that it's going to be really hard to come back into it. But for me, I was like, I'm going to go and spend time out in India and I'm going to work on my charity, possibly even think about, exploring what it might be like to live in a different country for a while. But interestingly, I don't know whether, and I've never really voiced this, I don't know whether Accenture thought, maybe you're not committed to us, maybe this is not the right place for you, or maybe it was just, bad timing and bad luck, because when I came back, this mentor, this is a role that you have at Accenture, a career counsellor, someone who was incredible, a very senior managing director, was moving from the London office to Ireland, and I came back and I had to find a new career counsellor who was instrumental in your career. And lo and behold, that career counsellor ended up being the person that led to my termination of employment.
Wow.
Yeah. So what is that? It's crazy, but it's divine timing.
And in that year that you had out,
Yeah,
where you were focusing on the charity that you founded, was there a sense of relief and that you weren't doing this high-powered job? And as we spoke about Accenture, everyone knows that most people in the UK or globally would have heard of Accenture. And that on your resume, on your CV, looks incredible. Was there a certain level of you taking it like a deep breath then and going, I can relax. I've got a year to do what I need to do, focus on me again. And then how did it feel going back then?
Yeah, such an important question and kind of an area of my life that I haven't explored for a while. But when I did take the leave of absence, my health was already declining.
Right.
in different ways. It wasn't necessarily related to the endometriosis. I didn't know I had endometriosis at the time, but there were other signs. And I remember thinking, sigh of relief to kind of have this time and space. But the most important thing for me at the time was that they wanted me back.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, they've said, we want you back. And I'm like, I've got a job here. I'm going to go and fly for a year, but I've got my home to come back to. And I never actually, even in that year, I loved, traveling, going to India, spending time with the RISE team on the ground in Bengal. But I always was like, I'm coming back. And it wasn't a dread of coming back. It was an excitement because I was a new person. I was a different person. And I loved who I had become. And I realized that there was a way to kind of still do both. And I thought that was amazing about Accenture. And this is the thing that's so sad, because I was there thinking, what a great company that is, first of all, helping me to accelerate and skill develop, also helping me to keep going with running RISE as a side hustle, is enabling me to take a year out and look after myself. All of these things, tick, tick, tick. But then when it mattered, look where I am now, sitting here because they didn't look after me in the end, even though I put in those years. And I think after I came back from the leave of absence, like I said, this change in the people around me, and I think that is crucial. I'm never going to say it's all of Accenture. It was a handful of people in very senior positions in the area of the business that I was in who decided to, make a mistake, basically, and act unlawfully.
Yeah, a huge mistake. Looking back now, I know that you've said earlier that there's some things, I know that you've spoken about this particular subject several times now on podcasts. You've been on television speaking about it as well. Now, when you look back to that moment, are you filled with, what comes up? Is it resent? Are you upset? Is it anger? What comes up for you?
All the things.
Yeah.
All the things. Complete devastation, sadness, shock. I still can't believe it. I still find it difficult at times to process what happened, because it was so brutal.
Yeah.
And it was to someone who loved the company and could never have imagined that they would decide to make decisions about me and my performance without, doing an investigation, without hearing me out, without finding out what was going on for me, without giving me another chance, giving me more time. These are not unreasonable requests.
No. And, women's health, I just feel like the number of people I've interviewed on this podcast as well who, unfortunately, many have chronic conditions similar to either endometriosis, Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, and or ADHD, for example. And there is a certain level of gaslighting or people not believing you. And for us as women to try and get someone to believe us is just so draining. Before we get into what actually happened, can you talk to us about what was declining in your health and what were the symptoms that you were feeling, and then what led to the endometriosis diagnoses?
Yeah. So I'd come back from my leave of absence. I had about a year, and then it was summer 2018, and I was feeling really unwell, constantly needing to go to the toilet, alongside pain, but that kind of pain that can suddenly be excruciating and then it's gone. So you're like, well, this is odd. And then it can come back and it can just hit you. And it was very up and down. And it was a situation that was kind of new to me, obviously, because periods are one thing, but I do think there's an endometriosis pain that is one that I said to my sister recently, it feels like a balloon is being blown up inside me. And it's this mix of discomfort and pain and you can't put your finger on the pain. And of course, it's interesting that I use that analogy because that's what was happening. Well, I had endometrioma, cysts on my ovaries that were growing bigger and bigger. and this one that was 7.5 centimeters diameter that my radiologist told me was the size of the Coke can. And I remember that. It was the most shocking thing to hear when I did eventually have the scan, and I was seen quickly. I was lucky. I had private medical health care under Accenture. So my story is a bit different. It was, a couple of months of excruciating pain and symptoms. I did start to have nausea, loss of appetite, tenderness, bloating. The fatigue was there as well. But yeah, I had the scan, and then it was like, you need immediate surgery. And what you just said really hit me, because you talked about not being believed. Now, they had to believe me, of course, because my doctor was saying, this is what's
proof.
going on for you, and you need surgery. But I think what transpired over the course of, the sort of 6 months that I was having this condition, going back to work sooner, still saying I'm struggling, but no one saying, should we talk about what you're struggling with and how we can help you? I just felt like I needed to carry on. No one in HR, my career counsellor, managing directors there put their head above the parapet to say, Sanju, we're worried about you because you're calling out the struggles that you're having. Let's talk about that and see how we can support you. I really started feeling like, I was in the wrong. And I think it was like the more I was like, I'm feeling quite uncomfortable about this, the more I was like, well, I have to be a better performer. I have to demonstrate that I am okay, because if I do anything but, I don't know what's going to happen. Mm-hmm. And so this is a really difficult situation to be in for anyone, when you can't be honest with your employer, because your employer has the potential to be ruthless. But even then, I never, hand on my heart, I never thought that they could sack me in the manner that they did. Never. And yeah, it's heartbreaking. And it's heartbreaking because I know now so many women are experiencing this day in, day out.
Yeah. It's heartbreaking. It makes me really sad when you described your symptoms, because I know a lot about endometriosis now. I've got stage 4 endo and adenomyosis. And as you said earlier, and I think for anyone with endometriosis, we know that each woman has a different story, a different timeline of diagnosis. They might have had private, they might have been lucky enough to have private, be able to afford it. They might have gone down the NHS route, had a good experience, bad experience, etc. And the way I describe endometriosis to people who never, didn't have a bad period, or to a man, I said that it was like someone was inside of my tummy with a knife and just pulling my organs apart and slashing through my organs. And you also said that there was a different kind of pain. And I think only women with endometriosis or chronic, like PCOS or some kind of gynae condition. I know endometriosis is not a gynae condition, it's a full body condition. But what I mean is, within that area, that something is wrong, it's not normal. And even sometimes I'll have flashbacks of how bad it was. And I don't think people get it. So what I'm interested in learning about is, when you did speak to people at Accenture, what was the language that you used? What were the key words? Because I've spoken to several, people around not getting listened to by my GP, for example. And people have said to me, the key words are, you have to say you can't get out of bed. You have to say, this is affecting your day-to-day. You can't do anything. You can't. And I'm like, well... And then they've also said, well, Annika, you need to make yourself look even worse. Like, you need to make sure you don't wear makeup, and you need all of these things to try and be believed, which shouldn't happen. I shouldn't have to say to someone, I can't get out of bed. And some days it was true. Or I feel like I can't go on anymore. Why should a woman have to say that to get listened to? So I'm interested in the vocabulary that you use with your managers.
Yeah. Gosh, by the way, I mean, I struggle to hear what you just said, because it's like, what a vicious cycle that we're going into if we're having to, in some ways be untruthful.
Yeah.
Because it is a fluctuating condition. This is the thing. You're not going to necessarily feel that horrendous every single day, but it can suddenly hit you. And an employer has to have an awareness of that. So I remember I came back from my phase return. We're in January 2019.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm speaking to my HR rep. And I'm telling her how heavy my periods are, how much I cannot walk, how much the fatigue is affecting me, how worried I am about travelling up and down the country as a management consultant. These are some of the things I definitely remember saying. And the reason this kind of sticks with me is that when I was in the courtroom, so now fast forward 3 and a bit years, in May 2022, when we were at the Employment Tribunal, she said on oath that Sanju gave me graphic details. She said that. However, Accenture as a company say that they didn't know that endometriosis was affecting me.
Right.
So my whole world, talk about the gaslighting thing is absolutely real when it comes to me. I was so honest. I was honest. But you can imagine when you're not getting a response to that, and I wasn't really at the time, you then think, I thought, better to not keep talking about these graphic details. But, it wasn't like I felt like I needed to, big them up or anything. I didn't do that. I was as honest as I could be at the time. But then for me, being honest was not saying enough. So then I kind of understand where you're coming from. We're stuck between a rock and a hard place. What are we meant to do?
And the thing is, graphic gave me a bit of I gasped. And it's because talking about a bodily function of, for instance, I'm having a lot of EMDR therapy around endometriosis right now. So I am having flashbacks and one particular memory is when I couldn't get off my bathroom floor because of the pain and I was bleeding so much. I was like, it felt like I was hemorrhaging. And I say that because I will put a trigger warning before this episode as well for some of the things that we're speaking about, but they shouldn't be deemed as graphic because it's a bodily function. It was what was happening to my body at that time.
Yeah.
And the whole mission of my podcast is to normalize conversations like this.
Yeah.
It is uncomfortable because there is shame, which is 100, and we can perhaps speak about this a bit later on about both being women of colour, both being of Indian heritage. And for me, there was potentially a lot of shame around having, it was dirty, I felt dirty personally.
Yeah.
And I really sympathise with that because I think the more we keep this in and swallow it and think, oh God, well, this is going to affect my career, this is going to affect my relationship, or I won't get a boyfriend because if I talk about how heavy my periods are, that might seem gross. The worse it will get because the more tension we're holding in our bodies, the more pelvic floor tension, as we know, is a huge part of all of this.
Mm-hmm.
So when did it get to a point where you wanted to fight for your health and you knew that this wasn't, you were so upset with Accenture for how they were treating you? When did you know it was like kind of the stage that you had to take action?
Yeah, well, it was basically about 5 months on from I'd just come back off second sick leave.
Right.
Had that conversation with the HR rep. She decided to give me a very generous phase return. I had 2 months where I could ease myself back into the business. And then because I was struggling with the whole travelling and even moving my body, I had a London restriction on my first project back. So I was due to be back full time, but on a London project in March 2019.
Right.
And this timeline's important because actually, for me, I was like, well, I've literally just come back off sick. Now I've just come back off a phase return. I'm just easing myself back into the business. everyone's aware, HR's aware, managing director aware, career counsellor aware. They know I'm going for senior manager. I am looking to make the next promotion level. And they're aware that I need some time. We're fine. We're going to be fine. Everything's going to be fine. And so I carry on in the manner that I had always done, which was you may be on the bench, but while you're on the bench, you do internal work. You put your hands in different pies and you're constantly trying to skill yourself. But I couldn't find a role that was chargeable. And this is the thing, in the corporate world, these things matter, the metrics, chargeability, time at level.
What does that mean, for people who don't know?
Chargeability is how much value you're adding to the business in relation to what you are being charged out as to your client. So, it depends on the number of hours. You are charging to a certain charge code every day. If you are not on a client project, your charge code is not going to be adding value to your chargeability effectively. So my chargeability was declining, but I was on a London restriction. That was my reasonable adjustment. When I did eventually get a chargeable role, it was an internal chargeable role. And it was because the managing director, who was the head of my practice, was like, look, you've not been chargeable for a few months. Go on to this chargeable role. Now, what I didn't know is that they were already having discussions about she's not chargeable for months. We're going to have to get rid of her. I had no idea. I was there going, right, I've now found this internal role. Amazing. Loving it in a part of the business that I cared about. Ethics and compliance, to do with talent and organisation, which was, I'd moved actually. I'd pivoted from the process improvement to something that was more kind of HR related, more people related. And then, this is the thing, it's so crazy. Out of the blue, I was told that I need to come to a meeting where I might be dismissed because my performance was in question. And so, I don't even know, how to say how shocking it was to receive this correspondence when the people around me are giving me no indication that this could be the case.
And it wasn't like you were underperforming, and in the sense of it was about chargeability, wasn't it?
Chargeability.
Yeah, it was just money.
Yeah, well, yeah.
But it wasn't about your performance. And so you had no feedback at this point at all. And how did that come across then? Was that an email where you said, where they said you might, a meeting that you might be dismissed in? Yeah,
it was an email with an attachment that said invitation to meeting. It didn't even say, it wasn't even at this point like this is a warning or this is a capability meeting or this is a, I think a lot of women that have got in touch with me recently have said that they're on a sickness management process and, they're stage 1, stage 2. I didn't have any of that.
No.
I wasn't even on a capability management process. I wasn't on a performance improvement plan. I was on nothing.
Because there was nothing to improve on because they couldn't, it wasn't your performance. So talk us through when you got that email, were you just like, is this for me? What how were you confused? How did you feel?
Oh my God. I mean, I'm getting sweaty palms now. It was like sweaty palms. You're slightly out of breath. You're pacing around. You're literally like, you don't know what to do. Where do you go? Who do you turn to? And I called my dad. And I was like, Daddy, I need to talk. Like, I didn't know who else to go to.
Yeah.
And I couldn't believe it. And I couldn't tell him, like, over the phone. I was literally like, I need to meet you, show you the letter. And he looked at it and he was like, Sanju, we're going to fight this. And that, for me, was...
What a guy.
What a guy. That was the most incredible moment. And that, I have to come back to that all the time. We will fight this.
Yeah.
I am a fighter. And it's not seen as a positive word for a woman, is it?
No.
I mean, even the word in itself.
Which just seemed angry. Oh, she's angry. Oh, God. Oh, it's her hormones. Yeah. But the sad thing is, I feel the same as you. I feel like I'm a fighter in a different way. But there are crossovers there because I've had a very similar work experience. But I don't want to be known as someone, I don't want to have to do this, but there's some that you had no other reason. Because I feel like if you didn't fight this, it would just be so unjust and it would just be so unfair, and that there was no way of accepting that because it was so unfair. I'm so glad you did fight it. So what happened after that meeting?
So we went to the Citizens Advice Bureau.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we went and we had a conversation about the letter. It was all very tough, though. It's all very kind of like, you want to fight this, but you're so scared and you just don't know what the point is, and you're losing hope and faith. But then that wavers. 1 minute you're like, no, there must be a mistake and we can overturn this. And then you're like, oh no, but they've sent it. And so what, like, does this mean that I'm really going to get sacked? And the following day I constructed a response that, you know, was along the lines of, I'm absolutely shocked and devastated, and that the last time we spoke, you were fully aware that I was unwell and that I have aspirations to make senior manager, and you said that you will support that.
Mm-hmm.
So what can all of this mean? And it's only now that I know through disclosure. So what I mean by that is, you know, the Accenture sharing evidence, that to that reply, they were like, oh my God, we need advice immediately. Because they weren't expecting, even that email, I think, they weren't expecting me to say, this is absolutely outrageous and I won't have it. And I basically said, I'm on annual leave next week, so you need to postpone the meeting. And even that was scary because, of course, they could have just come back and said, no, you got to come to the meeting anyway. It's horrible. I know that this happens. I know that from women who've written to me, because employers think they're above the law. Yeah. They think they can get away with anything, and they do, and they have. And it's time that it stopped. And I think now back to even like that moment, and it was like 7 years ago, that I had to find this inner courage to say, start using your voice.
Yeah.
Start saying, you know, what is fair. But it fell on deaf ears. You know, eventually I did have the meeting, the worst meeting of my life, where I went in with everything, all medical evidence, all performance feedback, even from the line manager who was managing me at the time. On that day, she gave me the most glowing feedback, and still they sacked me.
I can't get my head round it. I can't get my head round. And obviously your background, doing a degree in maths, there's no logic within this. And that's what, and I love maths as well. That's why I don't understand why people don't really research women's health as much. And I'm always like, I've got symptoms, you need to figure them out, because it can't be that hard. Like, it's, you know, do more research. So did you have support in that meeting when you went into it? Could you have anyone? Could you bring your dad along? Could you bring anyone along with you? And did they have anyone, you know, was it just internal people?
So important, this question. So first of all, Citizens Advice basically said, even if it's an unlawful process, at a minimum, they need to give you 7 days notice, and they need to let you know you have the right to be accompanied, which they, actually maybe they had in that letter, I can't remember. Irrelevant, to be honest, for me, because it was completely out of the blue and completely unlawful. So I asked a senior manager who I felt very close to join me in the meeting. So it was the managing director, who was the head of the practice that I was part of, who'd known me for some, 5 years, and who I'd worked closely with. And then an HR director, I'll just say that again, and then an HR director who was new to the business actually and didn't know me. And I think that's a really important point, that you kind of have these HR professionals come along and they think they know the system or they know the business, but they don't know the person.
Yeah.
And she didn't know me, and she didn't know my background, and she didn't care to look into my background and who I was, notwithstanding the fact that at that point I'd had, you know, the Asian Women of Achievement Award, that I'd met Her Late Majesty the Queen, that I'd gone to 10 Downing Street, that there were other parts of me like running Rise, irrelevant.
Do you think you were seen as just a number?
100%.
Yeah.
Pun intended. No pun intended. Response with a number. No, I was just yeah, a number, a person, a brown woman. I don't know. I still will. You know, how do we find these things out? Like, in terms of what was really going on for this HR director. And in this meeting, there was a script. These are things I know now because of through disclosure, a script that they had already decided what they were going to say.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, they took no minutes in that meeting. The ACAS guidelines in terms of workplace support say that any meeting, any dismissal meeting needs to be documented. Mm-hmm. Do you know what they did? They used the minutes that my companion, my colleague, wrote as their own minutes of the meeting in tribunal proceedings.
Are they allowed to do that?
Because they purport to that being honest and truthful. But that came out because you're on oath when you're in the courtroom.
Yeah.
But they will stop at nothing. These crazy tricks that these, you know, global corporates will use to undermine you. And I have to say that meeting, the way it unfolded, I don't know. I've got sweaty palms thinking about it because there was nothing I could do. There was nothing I could do in the kind of person that I was at that time.
Yeah.
And I have said that, you know, looking back, or if I was to go back in time, I would have done things very differently.
It's interesting that you say that, because I think you need to give yourself a lot more compassion with that, and I say that because you're a woman who was dealing with so much at that time, as well as a chronic illness. And this is the thing which upsets me the most, is you were going through all of that, so unfair, none of it made sense.
Yeah.
You had evidence, but you were also dealing with a diagnosis of endometriosis. You were also dealing with chronic pain. As we know, endometriosis, awful condition, because it affects your bowels. It affects your, not just, you know, it's not just heavy bleeding and painful periods. It affects your relationships, your friendships. It affects your mental health. There's so many different aspects of it. So for you to feel helpless, as you say, in that meeting, makes me so sad, because it's not even just that endometriosis is misunderstood. There was just so many different things which must have been going on for you. What hurt the most in that moment?
Gosh, what a question. Just the sheer injustice of it all. And what I mean by that is, I remember they said that they were going to go away and, you know, review everything that I put forward, the documents, what I'd said. They called my line manager as well. That's what they've said, that yes, it was good feedback, but it wasn't enough. And the closing of the meeting was the managing director telling me that I have considerable talent, that I should take that considerable talent elsewhere. What?
Wow. I mean,
I just, this whole, I mean, you know, it's fascinating having this conversation with you, because, you know, we're going into a layer that I haven't gone before.
And I'm sorry if this is triggering, because we can stop at any time.
No. I mean, it's my story. It's my truth. It's my reality. And it's what I've lived for the past 7 years. So when we talk about things like the meeting, I've never been able to share what was actually said to me in that meeting. And it's so important, because that was the meeting that ended my career at Accenture. And that was 7 years ago. And I have to live with that all the time. Being told that I was a poor performer, but at the end being told that actually, no, I have a lot of talent. So if I've got a lot of talent, why aren't you retaining me? Why aren't you redeploying me? Why aren't you giving me another opportunity in another part of the business?
Yeah.
What's happening here? And you said it's like, because I'm a number, but I'm a number that can't be affecting your bottom line to this extent.
No.
And this is where, there's a bigger conversation in terms of, a radical shift that we need in workplace culture. Because I, quite frankly, cannot accept that we are put on this earth to, work till, every hour of the day to get recognition, but then to be thrown away like a piece of garbage. And that's what happened to me.
Yeah.
I was a nothing. I was a nobody. In that meeting, when you asked me what was the most painful thing, it was being told in that moment, you just leave the building now.
Oh my God.
That's it. I say, I've got a meeting with a team. That's okay. You don't need to do that meeting. And suddenly, just in an instant, like everything's gone.
Yeah. And I feel like there's like zero empathy there. And even things like, don't worry, you don't need to do that meeting. It's like, oh, thank you. What do they want us to say? Like,
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I don't have to. Oh, great. I don't need to do that meeting. Oh, but you want me to leave now. Okay.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you about your diagnosis with endometriosis. And I sometimes think about this with myself, and I would love to know what you think about this.
Yeah.
With your friendships, relationships, everything, how did that change after the diagnosis? Did you feel more empowered at work to say, look, I've actually got a diagnosable condition now. Here's a piece of paper saying I've got endometriosis. And from a certain, from your identity, we've spoken about identity quite a lot at the beginning of the interview about your values. Did anything change after the diagnosis? And even with your friendships, did you feel different? Did you feel like you needed to be treated different? That might be a bad way of saying it. Did you feel stronger, weaker? What was going through your mind?
Yeah. So on the first part of that question, it's something that immediately makes me feel quite uncomfortable, because I thought I had done everything I needed to for my employer to know I have endometriosis, right? Occupational health reports, sick notes, talking about it when I have a recurrence of the endometrioma, talking about my symptoms with HR that apparently were graphic. I thought I'd done everything. What transpired through legal proceedings, and this is such an important, nuanced point, that they've now said that they didn't know. They didn't know the extent that it was affecting me. They didn't know it was a disability. And, the onus is on an employer to investigate, particularly if an employee has come forward and shared medical evidence, and that's what's come out of the judgment. But I also think there was this entire period that I went through in legal proceedings saying, did I not say enough then? Should I have said more?
Be more graphic.
Be more graphic.
Yeah.
Even to the point where, and I think this is relevant, it's on a practical level, that apparently because the sick note didn't continue to say that I was off sick for endometriosis, it needed to say the word endometriosis. That's what Accenture are saying. A court of law says, well, actually, it's about the symptoms.
Yeah.
And this is such an important distinction, particularly because you don't need to have a diagnosis in order to be recognised as disabled under the Equality Act 2010. And so I feel that any woman who has gone to occupational health, that is enough. HR, your line manager, they can't say anything. And now I'm like, well, I did enough. I said enough. And it was on them to try and understand and find out more. But we know what the issue was here, that they were basically afraid of the fact that they wanted to sack me. And if they demonstrate that they had knowledge of my disability, that's disability discrimination. And that's what I want to expose now across the board in employers. So it's still quite an uncomfortable thing for me, because it's this belief that we as the employee aren't doing enough, and we're doing our best. We're doing the best that we can.
Yeah.
And then I think about, I'm really lucky to have a very supportive family, very supportive friends, friends for life that, have been like there for me. But even I remember a moment before I was about to have surgery, lashing out, and my bestie saying, that was hard, and we worked through it. But it's so difficult not just to get a diagnosis like this. And I say like this because I had things growing in my body that I wasn't even aware of. How scary. But then I needed urgent surgery. The first time that I was going to have a general anaesthetic, and that they were going to, cut me open to carve things out. And that they found that I had stage 3 endometriosis, but there were parts obviously that they couldn't get to behind my uterus. And, you read these reports and you start talking about what sort of treatment you're going to need, the impact on fertility. What a horrific time we have to go through, and we internalize it.
Yeah.
And, I think to myself now, like, how did I carry on? It's so hard. Still going to work, still trying to perform, still trying to, be this incredible, ambitious woman who's driven and wants to make the next promotion point. I don't know what the solution is apart from more empathy, more understanding, and an appreciation of our entire being, and the fact that we're just human.
Yeah, and we as women with endometriosis or chronic condition, whatever it is, or symptoms, let's say, we're trying our best, as you say. And I think the hardest part is it's invisible. And for us as well, as, if this was growing on our outsides, if the endometrium and the, polyps, whatever it is, growing on the outside of your body, I feel like then you look like an unwell person. Then, of course, you should be signed off. Of course, you need to stay in bed for longer. However, it's so internal, it's so invisible. And what I really, get triggered by sometimes is the fact that when I was my last permanent role, I'd, put on makeup, a nice little outfit and go to work. But that, that day I hadn't slept because I had night sweats for 3 hours, or I would have had, just excruciating pain or pelvic, the throbbing that some women get with endometriosis and or sharp pelvic pain. But I would be presenting in a client meeting, for example, and then I would maybe go for one drink after work. And then a few days later, I'd say, I can't come in. My mental health is really bad today, or I'm having a flare up. And the answer is, the reaction I'd get from my managers, but you were at drinks the other day. But I saw you have a drink. But weren't you out? Didn't you post this on? Yeah. And I was so afraid of posting things on Instagram or hiding stories from, fellow directors or whatever, because it was like, well, I don't want to look like, but they're going to go, no, but Annika was out. Annika was talking. Annika was smiling. God forbid.
Yeah.
And as you might appreciate as well, like we're dealing with so many things at the same time. And the two things don't need to be exclusive from each other.
No.
I'm a woman with endometriosis, yes.
Yeah.
But I'm also a woman trying to survive. And I think that's the best way I can put it is survival. And it sounds like your story. And I think this is testament to you because of your values, your friends, your family. Shout out to your dad, who sounds amazing. But it's... And I don't like the word fighter because it just, it reminds me of heat. It reminds me of like, oh, fire. But you had that fire ingrained in you. This is why you've made history. But for a lot of women, they give up. they would have had that meeting with Accenture and, you know, perhaps gone, well, it is me. Or their meeting with HR, oh, God, why did I say that? Why did I tell them that?
Yeah.
So talk us through what happened then and how you persevered, because the 7-year battle, huge. You've made history, you've made the headlines, but within that, and we spoke about this when I first met you, is it sounds amazing on paper. You sound like it's incredible, but you're still fighting a chronic illness. And there are times where it must have just been so hard for you. Did you ever want to give up?
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting you talk about fire or just fighting. You know what I thought of just then? So literally a handful of days before the full hearing in May 2022. So it's now been almost 3 years since I was sacked, and I've been working on building our legal proceedings to represent my story in court. And my besties, Julia, Addie and Nora.
Oh, shout out to them.
Massive shout out to these darlings. And I said it in that order. God, I'm going to get emotional.
We can take a minute if you want.
I said it in that order because I think I did. Did I say Julia, Addie and Nora? I think I did. So the acronym is JAN. And you might know in Hindi, that's Jaan, which is like, you know, my dear, my love. And that's what they are. God, I didn't think I'd get this emotional.
But it's just what a thing to have such great friends who haven't felt the same symptoms but understand you and are there for you.
And they don't, you know what, so it's absolutely true. So they don't have experience of endometriosis. Addie has had some gynecological concerns, but they're just empathetic and kind and caring.
Yeah.
And what I wanted to say before I got so emotional was a handful of days before the full hearing, they sent me like a little beautiful care package. And in that was an incredible anthology of poetry called She Is Fierce. And I think the tagline or the byline was like, bold, brave and beautiful, you know, women from around the world writing. And they said, you know, you are fierce, bold, brave and beautiful. And I didn't necessarily believe it in all of these moments over the past 7 years. And you wouldn't believe it as well. That book sits by my bedside and I only read it for the first time last week. It was like had a moment of calm to myself and I picked myself up away from London and I was like, I need some respite because I love poetry. I love writing poetry. I love reading poetry. And I think we all have that. We all have that fire. We are all fierce. It's there. It's, you know,
ingrained in us.
It's divine feminine energy. And I've been on a spiritual journey over the past, particularly since COVID, I would say, in trying to find that, unleash that divine feminine energy. And I think it's something that, you know, it's like this nature or nurture. Yes, I was nurtured to a point where I had that belief in who I was as a strong, capable, independent woman. But that can ebb and flow, as we know, with our mental health, with our physical health. But it's always there. And I think what I've learned about myself is that in the moments when I wanted to give up because I was so sad, and why would I be so sad? Okay, something's happened. Maybe I should just move on. And I've had people say this to me, why couldn't you just move on? And I was like, this is me moving on. This is me tackling a very challenging thing to get justice for myself, but now get justice for women, not just in the UK, but across the globe, in a conversation about our rights when we are suffering from chronic conditions. And I don't think I thought that at the time 7 years ago. But slowly but surely, as I meet more women, particularly with endometriosis, as they share their own workplace story, of course I couldn't give up. And any time I thought about it, there would be another message from, you know, one of my besties, or a conversation with my family, or a conversation with a new, you know, endo sister, or someone reaching out and messaging me and saying how, you know, how bold and brave I am and how it's helping them. And it's kind of remarkable how much a message from somewhere around the world with solidarity and support and care, with that level of empathy, of understanding what you're going through, can be enough to be like, okay, just that little bit more.
Yeah.
But I've spoken about the darkness I've gone through, extreme darkness. Like, you know, I had to pull myself out of that with a lot of, you know, structured support through my counsellor, and, you know, really confronting my mental health issues.
Yeah.
And it's not been easy. But look, to push through that, and that's what they say, isn't it? You know, just hold on, stay here, and you just don't know what's around the corner.
And there's always hope.
There's always
and
hope.
I'm so glad I've met you, and it's such an honour to sit here beside you, because I feel like already you're changing history. You've changed, you know, as we've said, like globally. But I just feel like you're one of these people who are just, and you don't need to keep on going. You don't need to keep on going every day. But what I mean is, like, you won't, and I'm careful of words here, because it's not like giving up is a bad thing, is a failure for some women, because some women will accept things and deal with it in different ways. However, you're someone who's a doer, and you're making change, and for generations to come, it's just so lovely and amazing that you're building this community around you as well. And, you know, similarly, I've had messages either around my podcast. I've done a couple of talks on endometriosis, and I remember someone's fiance had after listening to my endometriosis talk, which I did at my old agency, his fiance got a scan because he relayed the information to her. Wow. And then she found that she had fertility issues, but that was sorted out then. And then she went on to have a baby. And just things like, even hearing that news, job done, because all I, you know, and I'm sure you feel similar to this now, if you can just help a handful of women, or even one, not go through what you went through. Yeah. And I think what's horrible is so many women are going through it.
Yeah. And I think it's really important to recognise that this is not something that every woman should go through. Like, legal proceedings are really tough. And, you know, the first lawyer that I had said that, like, this is going to be horrific. But there was something inside me that said, I'm going to take it on anyway. Yeah. And if you are someone like that, well, then go for it. And I always say, you know, reach out to me, send me a message if you think I can help in any way. But if you're also someone that's like, this is too much, absolutely listen to your gut. Listen to your gut. And it can be hard to listen to our gut sometimes, because there's so much other noise going on. And that's why I took myself away last week, because I was beginning to feel really overwhelmed again. And I realised that I just needed some quiet to think. And actually, when you get something like a letter that's saying you're going to be dismissed, or a letter that's a concern about your performance when you didn't realise that there was any issue, you get, you know, sort of stop in your tracks, and you're like, I don't know what to do here. I'm scared, and I'm worried about my career and my livelihood, because that's it. Some people have family and children, carers, you know, they need to provide for their family. And that is why employers can't be going around sacking people just because they feel like it. It is not okay. And that's the thing, you know, in my lifetime now, I'm like, we're going to see a change. We are seeing it already.
We are.
Where women are putting their hand up and saying, well, actually, you can't do that. And I think employers should be very scared.
I agree with you. I think I'm so glad you've got your besties. But I do think sometimes it's a very lonely journey because it's heavy.
Yeah.
It's heavy. And,
Yeah.
you know, sometimes I personally feel like I'm like, I want to make a change. I want to do this. And then I burn out again.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
And then
yeah.
I'm literally like, I need to take a break again.
Yeah.
And I think it's so important to know that. And what you
Yeah.
said earlier about listening to your gut. And there's no shame in women not, let's say, again, I'm struggling with the words apart from fighting or advocating, let's say. If a woman can't, maybe it's down to their chronic illness. Maybe it's because they've got children and they're too busy.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's just heavy to carry, isn't it? So we've kind of spoken about how it's affected your mental health within that 7-year period. But what I would love to talk about now is you are changing history. There are so many things that HR, probably in every, you know, company, could probably do better at. So if you could change something, if you had some magic to throw on, you know, just the UK, the globe, from a kind of workplace point of view, what would that be? Would it be education, awareness? What does that look for you, to you?
Gosh, I mean, it's a great question. It's a really challenging question as well, and I think I can't say that it can just be one thing. There are so many things that I think have to happen concurrently. We start with an employer. I think it's just being very honest with yourself about your strategic aim, your values, your integrity. Because I can hand on my heart say that unfortunately Accenture continue to demonstrate a lack of integrity. That's their choice. That's a senior leadership team and an HR team and a legal team deciding what they want to do. And they can make the right decision. So, you know, top down, when you're having these boardroom discussions about your people, about what your hopes and aspirations are for your great workplace that apparently, you know, continues to win awards under Forbes. It can't just be lip service. It has to be living and breathing what you are saying about yourself as a company. And then, of course, that cascades down into HR. So how can you have a lack of a capability process when you're that large a company? You need to have your policies and procedures in place at a minimum. And your team need to be aware of that as well. And they can't deviate because that's unlawful. And, you know, we have, you know, British standards around these things. It's not just the law. We literally have an entire framework that also talks about how women with gynecological health conditions that we've discussed, so endo, adeno, PMDD, fibroids, PMOS, perimenopause, menopause, it's all there. It's all there. It's not like they can just be like, oh, we didn't know about it.
Yeah.
It's there. It's live. And then I think I believe a conversation that needs to happen earlier. If we can call it education, we could call it skill development, but it's advocating for yourself within a legal framework. I believe all schools should be teaching the Employment Rights Act, the Equality Act 2010. And when I mentioned before that I didn't say the right things in that meeting, I didn't say, you know, this is a piece of legislation that means X, Y, and Z. I was scared of the law, but the law is there to protect us. And we should be so comfortable with it. So I think it's a massive piece of work that needs to be happening right now.
It's huge, and it will take years.
Yeah.
In my last episode, we spoke about gender equality, and currently it will take 100 years to be there. And I was like, oh, for God's sake, come on. I'm tired of this. I'm tired of waiting.
That seemed optimistic, if I'm being honest, but okay.
Well, we won't be around to see it, but you were making moves. I want to talk a bit more about the landmark judgment and where you are now. It's over 7 years so far. So it was 7 years last Friday, I believe.
Yeah.
So for anyone who hasn't been following your case continuously, can you explain why this judgment is so significant and where you are with everything right now?
Yeah, sure. So it can seem really complex when you talk about a judgment, but it is a great read, by the way. Pal versus Accenture, 19th of January 2026. That was when the Employment Appeal Tribunal judgment came out. And the three areas that we won on, the three claims, are really important. And the first one, very much related to this conversation, around endometriosis being recognised and considered as a disability under the Equality Act 2010. Now, why is that significant? To date, in this country, we have not seen any case reach the equivalent of the High Court related to endometriosis. We know that there is no guidance around gynecological conditions like endometriosis within the Equality Act 2010, but my case means that anyone with endometriosis now can say that there is a legal precedent for endometriosis to be considered a disability. And what does that really, really mean then? It means there are a series of steps an employer must take when assessing disability and providing reasonable adjustments. And they cannot just ignore medical evidence. That is absolutely unlawful. And the judgment says so. And the judgment talks about, all the different ways in which an employer needs to take reasonable steps to ensure that they are supporting and not discriminating against their employee. So absolutely huge. And the ripple effect of that is now not just talking about endometriosis as a disability, but indeed any one of the conditions that, we've been talking about over this conversation. The second area that is huge is dismantling the corporate up or out model. Now, I didn't really talk about this much yet, but what Accenture held in their dismissal was that I was not progressing in line with their up or out model. I had not been promoted within 4 years, therefore they could sack me for poor performance. What the judgment is saying is that does not potentially look like a fair reason of capability. That actually this model that you need to stipulate a number of years by which you need to progress, otherwise you can be sacked, is not in line with the Employment Rights Act in this country. And no one has challenged that before.
Wow.
And of course the corporate world are up in arms about it. They cannot believe. But this is a model that fundamentally is discriminatory to anyone with a chronic health condition. Because if you've taken time off work like I had, if you were on a phased return and that time is not adjusted, well then apparently, my 4 years are up, out you go. That's what happened with me.
And those were, when you spoke about the conversations which were happening that you found out about. It's like they've got this, they're like, we can blame it on the module, we can blame it on... which is just absolutely ridiculous when you look at your performance and how there was nothing that, no bad feedback.
There's nowhere to hide for employers, I would say. And what an incredible thing, right? To come out of this judgment. And then the third area is one that is interesting, particularly to lawyers and law firms, and is something that is kind of, I guess, looked at every day in employment tribunals, which is around compensation for unfair dismissal. So I was unfairly dismissed. That's what the court held, even in the initial tribunal in May 2022. But my compensation was reduced by 100%. And that's because the judge and the panel members held that I would have been dismissed anyway, even though there was no evidence to say that Accenture would have used a fair capability process to dismiss me. And that is a very important point of law that is basically being turned on its head by my case. And it's really funny because obviously I've done, TV, radio. It's been an amazing journey. But there are so many articles online from law firms quoting Pal versus Accenture. It is unreal.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah, it's insane.
And thank you for summarising that so well, because I think it's brought this kind of podcast together in the sense of, you know, the journey. But look what you've done now. That is just... And where are you now in this stage of it? And actually, before you tell us that, is, did you have in mind what you wanted to achieve from the court? Were there days when you went into court and you were like, this is what we're gonna, you know, fight for? This is what... Can you talk to us about that? How did that come about?
Gosh, do you know what? That's such a good question. And I think there's a sort of the before May 2022 and after May 2022. Mm-hmm. So before May 2022, I had so much hope, and you talked about that hope and faith in the legal system in this country. We were fighting for the claims for unfair dismissal, claim for disability discrimination. That's what we wanted to demonstrate, that these were areas that Accenture had been unlawful. Mm-hmm. When we had the first judgment from May 2022, I won on unfair dismissal, but I lost all compensation. So immediately you're like, well, that doesn't seem right.
Yeah.
That seems really tough to stomach. Or, you know, you lose on disability discrimination, then it becomes a new narrative of, oh, it's actually going to be really, really hard to win, to kind of follow through on these claims. And then you start losing hope and faith, and you think that this is not going to work out. And there have been so many stages, you know, in the 7 years, it's like you have a full tribunal, then you appeal, then you have an oral hearing, then you have another hearing. You know, it's never ending.
It's exhausting.
And it is so exhausting, and it's so overwhelming. There is so much paperwork. Just, it's an incredulous kind of proposition to go through legal proceedings. And so then you kind of, I mean, I had moments where I was like, we're not going to win. We're not going to do this. We're not going to be able to achieve what we set out to achieve, because actually I'm not sure that the court is on our side. So actually, when we found out, you know, when I have this conversation with my lawyer, and he's like, we've won on all claims. You're literally just like, you're joking. I was like, you're joking. You're joking. Like, I just couldn't believe it. I could not believe
Where
it.
Where were you when you found out?
I was at home. At home. And it was just, on the phone with my lawyer, Gerard Airy, Kilgannon and Partners. I've got to shout out, because literally him, you know, the legal team that I've had. And by the way, you know, there's a whole other thing to talk about the different law firms and the different lawyers that I've had, because they haven't all been as great and wonderful.
I can imagine, yeah. And that's also exhausting in itself. Gosh. Battling a chronic illness, battling mental health, you know, as well as just fighting for yourself and like fighting, you know, the right fit. Like you said with your mentors earlier on in Accenture, you had someone who you bonded with that felt right. Yeah. But it just takes one person, or it just takes, you know, a couple of people to be like, wait a second. I wanted to ask as well, did you, throughout, you know, the 7-year period, such a huge amount of time, and to go through that and all the paperwork, as you say, did you ever feel like they're right? And did you ever doubt yourself and go, wait a second, maybe I should step down? Did you ever think that?
I think it was so visceral, the number of times I was like, am I in the wrong? That's what they're saying, because you're reading reams and reams of pages that is exactly that. You know, to go into, I talked about disclosure, you know, a bundle of evidence with over 3,000 pages, witness statements from 6 individuals at Accenture that come to 100, like hundreds and hundreds of pages. All of those words on the page are basically telling you to give up.
Yeah.
they are building a case that is against you. That's their defense. And you read the words on the page, and that in itself is like the gaslighting, because you're like, hang on, that's not what happened though.
Yeah.
And then you're like, but that's what they're saying happened. No, but that's not what happened. And that is the counselling I needed to remember. You know, and my counsellor be like, they have to say that to win. That's what they have to say. And you have to say your truth.
Yeah.
And that's what I've worked on with
Stick to
her.
truth. Yeah.
I speak my truth. I have integrity. That's one of my number one values. Honesty and integrity. I can't imagine existing any other way.
Because what else? What is the world then? What is life if you're not honest? I don't really understand. Do you know what Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think this is so important to say, actually, just because we've brought it up around, you know, lawyers get a really bad rep. And I understand why. Like, I've met some horrific lawyers on this journey. But I've also met, you know, Gerard was that turning point for me. Actually, there's a whole horrific story where a law firm dropped me weeks before my full hearing. And I had to scour the Legal 500, and I spoke to 30 different law firms to try and get someone that was going to come and represent me. And it was Gerard. And I did an hour call with him. And all I can say is it was like this alignment in this belief of positive change. And there are lawyers, as there are many, many different industries and professions, where a belief in positive change for the better, for this country, for society, for communities, for our life. And that's what the bigger picture is here. And we work as a team. And I'm using these references, and I'm thinking about like defense. And I mean, it's literally like, you know, I've just been thinking about like the football, literally. And like, you know, we work together for a common goal. We're focused. We're dedicated. We're determined. We have absolute willpower to do the right thing. And here we are. And that's what it is. That's what's got us here.
And that's where the magic happens.
Yeah.
It's when people come together, community. It might not have to be community, but it's when people come together and it's like the shared goals.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you've created magic. You've created change. So we touched on it earlier. Your charity that you founded. Please, could you tell us a bit more about that and what the future kind of looks like for yourself right now and for Rise?
Yeah. Oh, thank God for Rise, hey? I think it was, you know, the thing that kept me going, particularly in the early years after I was sacked. We had COVID, and for me that was the goal, to get the charity through that. You know, the team were amazing, trustees were amazing. So at the heart of our work is supporting young people from rural communities of Bengal with their literacy. They are below the poverty line, they are illiterate, they come to us age 10 and they've already been let down by the system. A system that has the legacy of the British Raj that plundered Bengal. And here I am with a beautiful team working to change the lives of these young people, to give them hope and opportunity so that they can fulfill their potential. And we have a school, and I'm just so excited for what lies ahead. We've actually got our 17th anniversary coming up.
Congratulations.
At the end of
17
July.
years.
Yeah.
Sanju, that's incredible.
Yeah.
How have you achieved this much in your lifetime? And you look like you're 25. How is this possible? I don't understand this.
Oh, isn't it
It's
the
a
melody?
witchery.
No.
It's magic.
Yeah, and it's what I've always said, and I said it particularly when I was at Accenture, is that we all have the capacity to lend our services to a social endeavour.
Yeah.
And I believe that wholeheartedly, and it's what's kept me going. Social justice, of course, is my lifeblood and passion. We can find anything that we give a few hours to. You know, I give a lot of hours to it. But even when I was at Accenture, that was, you know, it was my side hustle. That's what I was known for. It was like, oh, she runs a charity as well as, she's a management consultant by day and a charity leader by night. I mean, I gave it everything. And, I started a little podcast called Something for the Soul because I believe in empowering people with stories from global education leaders. And I just believe in the power of social innovation. And so we continue to want to support more young people. I'm really happy that in the UK we've started this initiative called the Bengali Story to kind of build cohesion between both sides of, Bangladesh and West Bengal in India. And I'm really hopeful that we can take Rise, even further afield than West Bengal. And that's my hope and aspiration, to spend a lot of time on Rise when all of these legal proceedings are over. I cannot wait. But I also know that the time will come, and it's okay that it hasn't come right now. And I'm living and breathing the case right now. And, we've had some twists and turns that, that are going to take it out of me this year. But I know that the community, like wonderful people like you, are going to help me get through it.
And you've got through 7 years of it, Sanju, like so much of it that, the next year will be a cakewalk. Like it's, I say that and I know, but that it's life, isn't it?
Yeah.
You'll never, but the beautiful thing is you never know what's around the corner, but you also, that could be good, that could be bad.
Yeah.
I want to finish and ask you, what does owning space mean to you?
Oh my gosh. I mean, it has to be in the context right now of where the legal proceedings are going. I think it is such an empowering question, by the way. And I feel like that in itself needs a few hours. But I'm going to use the context of the case because I really have had to own this space of being a claimant in a global David and Goliath battle. And it's not over. And owning space is staying and going the distance. And we've just heard recently that Accenture have appealed and they're dragging me to the Court of Appeal. And I'm going to have to own that. I'm going to have to own that space just in the manner that I did for the Employment Appeal Tribunal when I was just, beavering away on my own and no one knew who Sanju Pal was. And now people know who Sanju Pal is. And I'm going to continue to own this space. And I'm going to need some help and support because it's going to be even more landmark than it was before.
Yeah.
On the 10th and 11th of November in the Court of Appeal at the Royal Courts of Justice in London. And I'm here for it. And I'm going to own it.
What behind you? I was going to say me and your besties are. And I was like, not that I'm in that crew, but also me and your endo warriors, me and the chronic illness girlies have your back. I'm with you all the way.
Oh, thank you.
Sanju, thank you so much for coming on Owning Space. As I said earlier in the podcast, it's an honour to sit next to you because I just see this is only the start and you've already made history. And I can't wait to see what you do next. So thank you so much for coming on Owning Space.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for being so wonderful in your care of my story. It's meant the world. And it's been an honour to sit here and talk to you as well. Thank you.
And finally, a huge thank you to Pococo for supporting today's episode. Today's conversation was such a powerful reminder that women's health journeys are deeply personal and that we all deserve space to pause, reflect and reconnect with ourselves. That's also what owning space means to me, creating room for ourselves, whether that's through honest conversations, quiet moments alone, or calming environments to create at the end of a busy day. I genuinely loved making the Pococo Galaxy project a part of my evening routine. Its soft projections help create a peaceful space for reading, journaling, reflecting, or simply slowing down before bed. If you'd like to create a little bit more space for your own well-being, you can find Pococo through the link in the show notes and use my code OWNINGSPACE for 21% off. Thank you so much for listening and being part of the Owning Space community. Thanks for listening to Owning Space. If you enjoyed the episode, please do follow, rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, or wherever you're tuning in from. It really helps more people find these conversations. So see you next time.